The Bible. It's a collection of ancient texts, prophecies, poetry, history, and letters. It holds stories of kings, shepherds, wars, and miracles. But for many, the Bible remains an unopened mystery. Here at The Bible Explained, we're not just reading verses, we're exploring the cultural bedrock and the dramatic narrative woven through its 66 books. Hit that subscribe button and let the journey begin.
Let's talk about Joseph. I mean, it's one of the most incredible stories ever told. You've got it all. A favorite son, that famous coat, crazy jealousy, betrayal, and then this unbelievable climb from a prison cell all the way to being the second most powerful man in Egypt. It's a story a lot of us think we know inside and out.
So, let's just do a quick flyby of this wild ride of a life story. It all kicks off with that coat, a symbol of his father's favoritism that really gets under his brother's skin. So much so, they sell him into slavery. Then in Egypt, he's doing great in Potiphar's house until a false accusation throws him in prison. But even there, his talent for figuring out dreams starts to get noticed, and that's his ticket to meeting the pharaoh. He predicts a massive famine, saves the whole country, and boom, he's made vizier. What a comeback.
But in this explainer, we're going to dig a little deeper than the Sunday school version. First, we'll look at a prophetic angle. Then, we'll actually go hunting for historical Joseph in Egypt. That's going to lead us to this mysterious guy named Baya. And finally, we'll try to see how these two very different pictures might actually fit together. And that's really the big question, isn't it? Who was Joseph? A real historical person? A powerful theological symbol? Or maybe a mix of both? Answering that question takes us down two completely different, but equally fascinating rabbit holes. Okay, let's dive in. First up, let's put on our theological hats. From this point of view, Joseph's life isn't just some dramatic biography. No, it's a story packed with symbolic meaning, one that many believe points to a much bigger story down the line. To really get this, we have to talk about something called biblical typology. It's a fancy term for a pretty cool idea, that certain people or events in the Old Testament are like a preview or a type of people and events that show up in the New Testament. And when you talk about typology, Joseph is pretty much the poster child. The parallels that scholars have drawn between his life and the life of Jesus are, well, they're pretty jaw-droppingly detailed. Just look at this chart. It lays out a pretty powerful case. Both are the beloved son. Both are rejected by their own people. They're sold for silver, they're stripped of their clothes, they're falsely accused. And then, here's the kicker, after all that humiliation, they're both raised up to a position of power to save their people. Joseph from a physical famine, and Jesus, in Christian theology, from a spiritual one. And this is exactly what theologians like Terry Lawson are talking about. He says Joseph's story is like a blueprint. He's tempted but innocent, he's condemned without cause, and then he's lifted up to become a savior. From this perspective, Joseph's whole life is a divinely written sneak peek of a much bigger story of salvation. Okay, but what if there's more to it than just theology? Let's switch gears completely. We're moving from faith to facts, from the theological to the archaeological. The question isn't, what does the story mean anymore? Now it's, wait a minute, did any of this actually happen?
So the short answer? No. There's no Egyptian papyrus that says, Diary of Joseph, the Hebrew vizier. But, and this is a huge but, historians don't just give up there. They ask a different question. Was there a time in Egyptian history when a story like Joseph's could have happened? And it turns out there was. We now know, thanks to things like climate science and archaeology, that around the late 1200s BCE, the entire region got hit with a monster drought. We're not talking about a couple of bad years. This was a 50-year-long climate catastrophe that literally caused empires to collapse.
And this famine turned the geopolitical world upside down. The mighty Hittite Empire was on its knees, begging Egypt for grain shipments. The Mycenaean civilization in Greece, it just vanished. But Egypt, thanks to the magic of the Nile River, was okay. It became the breadbasket of the ancient world, the only place with food. It's right here, in this specific historical moment, a world-ending famine where Egypt is the only superpower left standing, that we find a real historical guy who sounds an awful lot like the biblical Joseph. His name was Baya. Get this, he wasn't Egyptian. The records call him a foreigner from the north, which for an Egyptian meant one thing, Canaan or Syria, exactly where Joseph was from. And this guy wasn't some nobody. He climbed the ladder all the way to chancellor, the most powerful job in Egypt besides Pharaoh himself. His power was just off the charts. He was basically running the country for a young, weak pharaoh. Baya even had an inscription made that said he was the one who put the pharaoh on the throne. As Egyptologist Aidan Dodson points out, for an official to make a claim like that, you don't see that anywhere else in Egyptian history. It's insane.
So when you start listing the similarities, it gets kind of spooky. You have a foreigner from Canaan who becomes vizier during a massive famine. He has titles that mean he's the ruler of all Egypt. Some linguists think his name, Baya, might even be related to an early Israelite name. Oh, and he was given a huge tomb in the Valley of the Kings, an honor almost exclusively for pharaohs.
But, and this is a really big but, this is where the history in the Bible story slam on the brakes and go in two completely different directions. Joseph's story ends in forgiveness and family and everyone living happily ever after. Baasha's story does not. We have the final, brutal record of Baya's life on a piece of pottery. Basically, an ancient office memo. It announces, very bluntly, that the pharaoh had Baya executed as a great enemy of the state. His huge, fancy tomb was never used. His rise was spectacular, but his fall was just as dramatic.
So, what are we supposed to do with that? We've got Joseph, the celebrated savior, on one side, and Baya, the executed traitor, on the other. How on earth do we reconcile these two totally different portraits?
Well, we're basically left with two different ways of looking at the same story. The theological lens sees a beautiful tale about God's plan, about forgiveness, about hope. The historical lens sees a story that might just be based on the memory of a real guy, Benya, but whose real ending was maybe too dark and tragic to be told around the campfire.
But here's the thing. Maybe these two views don't have to be at war with each other. It's totally possible that the memory of this incredibly powerful foreigner, Baya, was the historical seed of the story. And then, over hundreds of years of retelling, the story was shaped to teach a deeper lesson, to transform a tragic ending into one of redemption and hope. And that leaves us with this huge, fascinating question. Can a story have its roots in a real historical event, but also convey a deeper, more profound kind of truth? The fact that we're still talking about Joseph thousands of years later suggests the answer is a resounding yes. It shows us how a story can find meaning in tragedy and hope in betrayal, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful truths live right where history and meaning collide.
The Bible isn't just a history book. It's a living, challenging text. As you reflect on what we covered today regarding this topic, consider how this new context changes your reading of the verses. If you appreciated this breakdown, sharing it with just one friend who struggles with understanding the Bible is the best way you can support the channel. Subscribe for more, click here for your next explanation, and never stop seeking clarity. Until next time.